Hi, Courtney.
Hi, Phil. How are you?
I'm I'm good. Busy time.
Yeah, it's the holiday season, and I don't even know who we said we were gonna talk about last week, but how could we not talk about Rob Reiner? And I guess before we talk about the chart, maybe we could just how I'll say we're living in unimaginable times.
Yes, it's very unsettling, and this violent death of someone who we knew pretty well for many reasons, and somebody who I think had such a just a generally great reputation. I think everybody, when they think of Rob Reiner, they get the same feeling of, oh yeah, I love that guy. Love his movies. He was Meathead. His he was Rob Reiner was his I mean, Carl Reiner was his dad. So, and I think that's how we should think of him. And we should celebrate him that way, right? He was just this wonderful, down to earth guy he just seemed like uh, he could be your neighbor. He just had that kind of quality to him, for me anyway.
Yeah, he and I like what you said, like neighbor, like he seems a nice guy, right? Like the guy next door in a way. He looked normal, he seemed normal, which is not so Hollywood. He didn't feel so Hollywood, I'll say.
Yeah, and I think that's a difficult thing to do when you grow up in the spotlight, and he certainly did.
Yeah, it was so interesting. I mean, I didn't even realize how famous his father was. He really, his life, I think we're going to end up talking about his death too, but we're not going to do that today because how can we just honor this man and look to see who he, who was he? But I will say he made amazing movies.
Yes. And so the other thing I'm just thinking of now that you mention it is that the father-son dynamic. His father-son dynamic with his dad and the other father-son dynamic with his son.
Well, and what I was thinking about just with that too is in a way, he felt like he had something to prove, that he was more than just his father's son, right? Because he had these big shoes to fill. And what's interesting is, did you hear that I guess his father didn't think he was so funny. Did you hear that? That Carl Reiner
Yes.
didn't see how great Rob Reiner was, but Rob Reiner had to make a name for himself and be his own. Yeah, interesting, right, Father? I will say, when it's the same sex, it's very different than having the opposite sex.
Definitely. Yeah.
It's harder, the
And I don't.
father-son relationship.
Mhm.
I mean,
Yeah.
for anybody, it's a very hard relationship. There's a movie about the dragons. Can't even remember the name of the movie. Oh, How to Train Your Dragon. It's such a beautiful movie. It's all about the father-son relationship, and the father couldn't see the son or how great the son was.
Mhm.
So it's a hard relationship.
Yeah. I think especially so in a situation like this where the dad was just a lion. The dad was super talented, and like his son, was just a chip off the old block. He just seemed to have this very welcoming, friendly, positive disposition. At least that's the way it seemed to me. But he must have been like that because his writing conveyed that. The way he wrote comedy was very human. It was like he
Well, he said, I
loved.
think that Rob Reiner said he's like the nicest guy. Rob Reiner himself said, I looked at my father and he was like the nicest man ever. So how can I be like that? I can't ever live up to that.
Yeah. Well, I think he did I think Rob Reiner did his own thing. And I don't think a lot of people know that he had to go through a lot of hoops to get that role in All in the Family. It was definitely not.
I don't know. Can you tell me? Do you
From
know?
what I remember, he had to go through lots of rehearsals. Like, let's bring him in again. Oh, we've got this other guy. Well, maybe we should bring him in again. That kind of a thing. It was not at all, and I don't think it had anything at all to do with his dad. He There was lots of things going for him for this role. One of them being, I think, is that he already had the New York accent. He had such a great New York accent, and he still does. He always did. So, but they must have seen. It's so clear to anybody how absolutely perfect he was for the role. But at the time, he was not a known actor. He came in like his dad into the industry as a writer, really a writer actor, just like his dad. So there was lots of similarities for his dad, because his dad was an actor, great performer, very funny, but it was his strong writing skills that opened other doors for him. The same with his son, but I absolutely feel like Rob Reiner struck out on his own, and he found opportunities, and this was just the perfect one for him.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, listen, it's amazing. I mean, the career he had, like, I can't wait to look at his chart, but just the career he had, who he was. It must be very hard to be so public, right? In some ways, our world's much harder than it. There was something nice about back in the day,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Also, even in Hollywood, that you weren't so public, and they didn't expect you to be so public. Like, your job was to be a performer, not to try to be selling yourself. And it's a very different world now that we're living in.
Oh, yes. Yeah. I think the spotlight is on everybody 24/7 now. I don't think it was ever that way before, because we didn't have the electronic connectivity that we have now.
So can you talk about, because I think that I'm not so much, we all know Rob Reiner, but I don't think people know so much about Carl Reiner. So he was very famous, right? Wasn't he like a very big famous?
Oh, yes. So he was a comedy writer in New York. And again, they were living in the Bronx, where I'm from, when Rob was born. So they very much a guy who went to work every day and made a living. And he wrote the pilot for what became the Dick Van Dyke Show. And he actually shot it in the role. He was the role of that became Dick Van Dyke's. But the pilot didn't sell. The pilot didn't go. And Rob Reiner himself said, "I'm going to retool this, and I want Dick Van Dyke in this role." So that
Wait, wait, Rob Reiner or Carl Reiner?
Sorry, Carl Reiner.
No,
Carl Reiner, the
Carl
dad.
Reiner. At first, this is so interesting about shows that don't make it at first and that
Right.
aren't going to succeed. And then so he decided to then sell it again and then put someone else in that role. And then that was Dick Van Dyke.
Yeah. So, and as far as Dick Van Dyke was concerned, he was approached, and given the role, which is a very different situation than going in and reading the lines and being, scrutinized. But that show was a landmark show, and it's a classic for good reason, because the writing was just outstanding. It was far and away, you know, above what people expected of entertainment at the time. It was about a working guy. He went into Manhattan and worked as a writer, of course, but it was about his home life and his work life, very much mirrored Carl Reiner's life. He took it from his own life, but he made something wonderful about it. So Carl, again, uh, very much a writer. He's written books. He's wrote lots of wonderful films like All of Me, which he also directed. You know, a
Really?
movie that I love with Steve Martin and Lily Tomlin. So very much a working guy, and a although Rob was born in the Bronx, the family moved out to L.A. once the Dick Van Dyke Show really hit its stride. So again, that's another interesting father-son dynamic because the dad, worked hard to get where he was, and the son was there to witness all of that, right? So the son watched the dad, move from the Bronx to Hollywood and realize success, all of those things. So that's a definitely different childhood experience than somebody who's already established in Hollywood.
Yes. Well, yeah, and I was thinking that that's actually very interesting because, yeah, by then they were very famous already. By the time they had their children, they had made Harry Met Sally, and so that was became a huge hit. So
Mhm.
it is different. It is different, and I'll say we can't control. But let's look at his chart because I do think amazing. I mean, just amazing, and the Dick Van Dyke Show, amazing, right? And just how real. I think that that's what's hard for me sometimes to watch shows when they're not real. And the Dick Van Dyke Show was very real. It could be, and same with All in the Family, right? It could have
Mhm.
been. It felt real. Just the
Mhm.
conflicts that we have as human beings.
Mhm. That's right. I definitely felt that way. I mean, I discovered the Dick Van Dyke Show when I was in college, you know, uh, because
Oh,
it was a little bit before my time, and it's still great. I'm still a big fan.
I mean,
So here's this.
imagine you couldn't say most. You couldn't have. Let's see. Can you see the that black thing, or am I the only one that sees it?
I don't see the. I see more than just the chart. So I see the
Okay,
other.
I'm going to stop sharing and I'm going to try to share it again because this is what happens. Okay, are you seeing the whole chart now?
Hold on 1 second. It's pulling up. Yes, perfect.
I will say, Phil, we do not have the exact. So let's talk about astrology really quickly. We don't know exactly what time he was born, but considering I did, and if you look online and ask for exact time frame of his birth, there is no exact time. So that's the first thing that we have to remember that we don't have the exact house system. But I do think since he was such a famous person and he has been famous for honestly probably his whole life, right? A known person. I'm putting the sun in the 10th house. The sun as in the solar sun, not the sun. But I yes. And we can actually almost switch it, but look at that right away. I didn't even look at that full moon.
Yep,
What a powerful in a way, he was so. If you just think about what a service he was to us, right? Think about that Virgo moon and being a person that makes the world a better place. He really did make the world a better place, and he did do a lot of philanthropy, actually. So
yeah,
beautiful
and
full moon baby, I'll say to you. His baby's born, and what a full moon baby he was. No matter what, even if he was born at a different time, you're still looking at a full moon, no matter what.
that's right. He was definitely a full moon baby.
So they feel a lot too. I always think this is interesting about people that are full moon people. There's something very sensitive about them that people don't always know. When we see someone, when you meet someone, we don't maybe see that they're sensitive, but I'll say he's probably a pretty sensitive guy.
Hmm. Yeah, that the moon is a pull. It's especially in the fourth house. It's rooted in his the innermost part of his being, and I think that also has a lot to do with fun-like dynamics to the opposition here. So Yeah, the other interesting thing is that it's puts Pluto and Leo in the third house.
Wait,
And
wait.
those,
Oh yeah, but don't go there. Let's stick with the not the houses, just because I am a little concerned about
okay.
where the houses are. Does
Mhm.
that make sense? I think there's an interesting, I don't know. I don't know what the
Mhm.
houses are, but so I'll say with I would think that we have, even though this does seem like it could be, right? It could
Mhm.
be, if you think about it. Could be his
Mhm.
chart, actually, because if you think about Gemini, he is a storyteller. And then I would think his people in his life are bigger than we could ever imagine, right? People showing up in his relationships are these big characters, but I don't know about the time. So I don't
Right.
know about
Well,
that.
you still got the conjunction with Mercury and the Sun, which is very telling for him, right? Because he can storytelling. He was a writer, director, actor. He can do it all. He wants to get that story out, and he does it in all kinds of ways.
But you know what's so interesting about it makes me want to cry in a way because he was able, okay, I don't think you're born to be your son. I think you become your son. And he did become his son because it was able to go into so many different facets and tell us so many different stories. It's almost kind of unbelievable to think about the broad career he had and the amount of movies he made and how different they were. That's very rare. So I think of Pisces and that flow and that beautiful sense of just surrendering, right? And just allowing, I guess, being in that place and just kind of fully absorbed. My guess is that when he was on set, he became fully absorbed where he was. And it was almost like it became a magical place.
And it's very funny too that you mentioned Pisces because his big movie hit, I think the classic for him would be The Princess Bride. Everybody loves that. Everybody loves that movie. I mean, everyone's a little bit fanatical about it, how much they love it. And that's great. It deserves that. But I think it's that make believe how 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 easily he stepped in to that fantasy world and really played with it in a very comfortable way.
What's interesting, did you know the story about that? I actually just heard the story. He loved the book. He read the book, I think, when he was a teenager. And then I thought, wow, I mean, what boy is, I mean, at a very young age, he read The Princess Bride and then he thought, let me make a movie out of this. But just the creativity of that. And I do think that that's very Pisces. And what's interesting is like then you automatically want to go to where's his Venus, and then his Venus is at like 1 degree Aquarius, opposite Saturn in Leo. I mean, he did his chart beautifully, right? Just talk about like this the structure and the ability to create and create magic and something that we've never seen before. And Princess Bride was, I would say, I think they thought it would be a failure, that it wouldn't succeed. It was right. If you on paper, it didn't seem like it would. It's a cult classic, literally cult classic.
Absolutely is. And
It,
it's very
I,
dear to
I
people's hearts.
I know people love that movie. It was not like one of my favorites of his. Did you? And people love it, and people are just obsessed with that movie. But I never, I was not. I should watch it again. I try to watch it over and over again, wanting to have that obsession with it, but I did not have that.
Oh, yeah. A friend of mine gave me a DVD and demanded that I watch it when he found out that I hadn't seen it. I can absolutely see why. It's really, and it has magic in it. People, he was able to get people to connect with that. And not anybody, this is not something that just any director can do. He had to have, I think, that Piscean fascination with other worlds and fantasy in order to connect with it as a teenager. He had that vision in his head and he brought it to life.
Yes, I think that was perfect because he must have envisioned it and then he could create that reality. And it's amazing, right? We could think about what's an artist, right? It is this vision, and then but then how do you get people to do what you want them to do? And that is what they consistently said. So where would that be? And I think this is interesting because we could think about where he was able to direct people to do what he envisioned, which is very, very, very hard to do. And I think you go back, Mars is in Pisces too, right? It's like this. I wonder if people felt, in a way, very safe with him.
I think that Pluto Leo energy plays out here too, because I think it's got kind of a royalty aspect to it. Like the person has regal energy of some kind, leadership, but like it's a benevolent form of leadership. He
Wait,
can lead
do you
not
know
through
what?
terror.
Think how brilliant what you just said was. You said there's something royal about him, right? But now think about his south node was in Sagittarius, and that could mean that in some life he was bigger than life in his last lifetime. There was something royal about him, literally, and he kind of was born into this,
Yeah.
in a way, a royal family, and then that's trining his Pluto, and right, there's something about him that he's transformational, like he's able to transform with hard work. But I would think that maybe he gets so, you could think, I think this, I think one of the things, and I don't want to bring in the sun, but one of the things the sun felt was that he was great with everybody and that he didn't get seen maybe how he wanted to. But sometimes when we're artists, in order to do our work, we have to be fully absorbed in the movies, right? I always think, how do you not fall in love on set when you're in a
Mhm.
make believe world, and in order for it to become great, you in a way have to be absorbed in that world. You can't. It's hard to be. I'm not saying that's right or wrong, but it is interesting how, in order to do what he did, he had to probably be very much, I'll say, sucked in a way to create that reality.
Mhm. Yeah, I think that was his in his one of his core impulses. I have this, I'm excited about what I'm seeing in my head, and I must make it real. And he did.
I think he was created for lifetimes because that Venus is also sextiling the south node, and then now it's also trining that north node. But here, he was a great storyteller. So I think about the nodes and think about how, I don't know, he's a great storyteller. Great, great storyteller. And I think he really did shock us in a way with that Uranus on the north node.
Oh yeah, definitely.
He shocked us.
Yeah, and definitely.
It's a little
Yes.
shocking, right? That he, okay, think about shocking. Maybe the chart is right in a way, we could say, because Uranus right in the beginning on the top. But here, how can you expect a guy like Meathead, right? Meathead to become one of the best directors ever? And
Right.
how, and we get so stuck. This is another Pisces beautiful quality is that sometimes we could get pigeonholed into like a role, and maybe people wouldn't have taken him seriously as a director, but he didn't care about that. He decided he was going to be a director, and he blew people away because Spinal Tap now, I mean, it was so way ahead of its time, and now people are imitating that over and over and over again.
Yeah, again, he put his mark on that. He had a vision for that, and he brought his comedic point of view to something that connected with the audience. It was fresh, it was different, and people understood the his novel approach to it.
What do you think is funny? Like, what do you, because it was funny that I was listening to something and they said someone noticed when he was very young that he was funny, and the father's like, I don't see that he's funny. And I don't think the father saw, I don't think Carl Reiner ever saw his son as funny, but he was very funny. Where do you think funny would be in a chart? It's funny to think about. I think it's Scorpio energy, kind of, right? In a
Uh-huh.
way, I think Scorpio has funny. I think they're funny because there's something about laughing at the humor of the darkness, which I guess Jupiter.
Mhm. You mean in general, what would signify funny in a general way in a chart?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, like I think Joan Rivers has a very strong set Scorpio energy, and she was just very good at like finding funny in the truth. And
Hmm.
so I wondered, to, in your opinion, what you think of as funny in the chart. But I can say that he has a very strong Scorpio energy. So,
Right.
um, but what
Well,
would you
yeah,
say?
I think Scorpio likes to, uncover things and burst people's balloons a little bit. And so I think that's where a lot of his comedy came from. I've been told that Mercury, Uranus, planetary energy can have something to do with humor. But also I've heard Capricorn, which is not the first thing you would think of, but there there's there's humor in Capricorn as well. But the other thing I'm just thinking now about Rob Reiner is, his career was hugely successful, but he had success in his personal life too. He had a long marriage, three children. So that's a really
In Hollywood,
great
being
in
very rich
Hollywood.
and being very famous. Well, and also, so his first marriage was to Penny Marshall. He was married to her for 10 years, and he adopted her child. Do you know that? So he adopted her child that she had and loved that child. And then they got divorced and it was amicable and they were friends. So that in itself is unheard of,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so, and then when, do you know the story about Harry Met Sally? Do you know that when he first made Harry Met Sally, he reached out to Nora Ephron, and then they made Harry Met Sally. And originally, Harry and Sally were not going to end up together because he was kind of down about love. And then on the set, he fell in love with Michelle,
Uh,
who he was married to, and he changed the ending because he believed. I mean,
uh,
he believed in relationships. And I look at that Sagittarius, look at the Juno. So Juno and Sagittarius learned to believe that there was a possibility for love. And so he wanted to end the movie in a happy way. And so
I
they,
didn't know that.
yeah, it's and that, do you know in the movie too, do you know when the girl who's screaming in the orgasm is I'll
Yeah,
have
of
a, that's his
course.
mom.
Yes,
So
that's right.
yeah, he's I love that movie.
Yeah.
I love
Another great.
it showed friendship, I guess, like a
Mhm.
friendship blossoming and growing. It's yeah, it's
He definitely made his mark. And but I don't think that was his intention. I think he was just really into the work and telling a good story, getting excited about doing the work.
I think in order to be good at what we do, we have to love what we do. And so
Mhm.
when people don't love what they do, I don't think it comes across that well. But I do think he had, let's talk about big shoes to fill, right? Let's think of Saturn. I mean, it is interesting, right? Saturn is in Leo. He had a very famous father, right? So he had a very famous father. He had a very famous father, and how hard that is to live up to that. And I think he wanted to.
Mhm.
I think he wanted to. And he did. He did it
Mhm.
his way. But do you think there's this Yeah. I don't think it was about being successful. I think it was about making things he cared about. And I don't think he ever won an Academy Award. I think that was right, or Emmy for his directing. But he did win an Emmy for, didn't he win an Emmy? I read that he won an Emmy for All in the Family, no? I think so.
Probably he must have. He must have. But he's done, he's done great work of all kinds in front of the camera and behind the camera. He's just done a lot of things. And I think he came into the industry without a very clear intention about, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to direct movies. I could be wrong, but I don't, from what I read, it seemed that he was checking things out. He was writing on a show or he took a little part here and there, but I don't think he had a path laid out before him.
Well, what's interesting is are you into the Progress Son? Because I'm a very into the Progress Son kind of. I would really be interested to see what happened when he was 15 years old, just because then the sun he would be a new moon and he would have a new moon in his progress chart. But when he became famous for All in the Family, he was an Aries. He had an Aries sun. And in a way, he was doing something that was never done before, right? That show was, I was listening to I watched something about him and they said when they put it out on the TV, they were like, we don't even know if we want to put this out. It was CBS put out All in the Family, and they're like, we don't even know if we want to put this out there. And so watch it at your own risk. And we're not sure if we're like even standing behind this show. And then it became such a huge success, but they did not know that. So there was a real risk in taking that. So he was very much an Aries sun since he was 15 years old. There was this. So something changed, I guess, in his life when he was about 15 years old. I wonder if he started acting around 15.
Yeah, it's interesting because there's a lot of Aries in that character and his relationship with the dad. They're always at each other, right? They're always arguing. There's always conflict. That's what you tuned in for, to see what was going to happen next. Lots of yelling. And that's what I think people really connected with. It just seemed like, okay, I'm really in these people's living rooms now.
Because families fight. Here's the
Mhm.
thing, families fight. We're meant to fight with each other. We're healing. We're healing with our relationships. Our relationships are meant to be difficult. I think that's sometimes what I wonder is like maybe we should tell children from a very young age, life is just not meant to be so easy, and we are going to have hardship and we have to learn to grow through it.
I think that Rob Reiner witnessed that as he grew up through his childhood. I think he knew what struggle was. And I'm not sure if
But don't we
people who,
all? I mean, I go back to this idea that does anyone get through life without a struggle?
well, I think some people try to take shortcuts and that doesn't work. Or they're in a situation where others allow them to take shortcuts. And that leads to tragedy.
You know, it's I go back to all the money in the world, and I mean these are people that had all the money in the world. But he did his chart very well. I will say, the Virgo moon's an interesting thing because a really good Virgo moon is that you're always improving things, you're doing a better job at things, which I think he did very well. But it's also critical of ourselves. If you have a Virgo moon, you're critical of yourself, you're critical of the people around you. And it's not necessarily because it's mean, it's because we could think that it could be better for them. So we want more for people. And I will say, as a parent, as I am a mom, when we love our children, we want more for them. Maybe than they want for themselves or they believe in themselves. And it is such a hard job to be a parent. No matter how much money you have, no matter what your color skin is, no matter where you're, it's a difficult challenge.
Yeah, I can't imagine. I don't have any children, but I think, the responsibility and the worries that come with all of that. And you don't get a break from it. It's always there.
You know what's so interesting, Phil, about his chart? I mean, it's a very similar chart to my own, which in some ways not really, but there's a couple similarities, which is very interesting, and I didn't realize it till just now. But he has that Mars square, and so it's not easy for him to have arguments with people. Like there's he wants to be a nice guy, and sometimes it doesn't help to be a nice guy, and he's supposed to learn to kind of not be such a nice person, right? If that makes sense, like learn to fight, learn to, and it's really it's amazing because he that Mars and Pisces, it's hard to kind of imagine taking action or like doing action in this watery kind of way.
Yeah, the
Wow.
power of Mars is not as strong, certainly.
No, it wasn't
And
comfortable for
Pisces.
him. It's not comfortable for it's interesting that he was such a good director and telling people what to do, but he's not so good at telling people what to do. So I think that's funny. But again, I think when you're doing a job and it's clear and there's a working rule and people want when you're getting the best out of the people and it's for their highest good, maybe it's different. I don't know than being in a family dynamic. But
Oh, I
interesting.
just think, yeah, I think you can guide people in a way. You can use that energy to guide people in a compassionate way. That's, I think, the way Mars and Pisces could be used, to be direct but compassionate. I think he was. I think the trouble can occur when somebody is confronting, you know, somebody who talks back or, somebody who says no. And I think somebody who had his type of life may not have had to deal with a lot of people telling him right to his face, no, no, I don't want to, no, I will not. That's where I think he could get very thrown off, understandably.
Well, and not having control. For instance, you just think about the you could always just look at thinking of the sun as the Mars Pisces, right? His sun and just drugs, not being able to control that. And then what do you do? And you have to let go and let God, but it is very, very, very hard to do that. And you could almost want to numb yourself and you would pretend that the problem's not there, which is it's so easy to do rather than face our stuff head on. So it's interesting that in a way, do our problems come back to haunt us in this lifetime? And I'll say, yes, 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 yes. And we're always confronted with it. Even when we think we healed it, then we're always just re-confronted with that. And so it's just that same thing that was probably great on the movie set was probably not so easy in his everyday life. You're right. And I think when you have a lot of money and you're rich, people say yes to you. So you
And
just
never mind the fact, if you're rich, they'll say yes. But I think people generally don't want to hurt anybody else's feelings, right? They just, you just don't want to do that unless you really have to. And again, I just don't think there were a lot of people in his world that felt comfortable doing that.
Yeah. Well, people loved him, and I think he changed people's lives, right? I don't think Meg Ryan was as famous. I don't know about like he really he made these people great. And so that Mars Pisces in a way, right? That Pisces energy, I think, created this beautiful artistic sense of self and then brought people with them into community, right? And I think that is that Venus and Aquarius, right? Opposite Saturn. He was a star in a way. He worked very, 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 very hard. He became a star, right? Saturn and Leo. And then he used his stardom or his ability to work really hard and then change the world, I will say, to affect the human people, everybody, society, with his art. And then you think about it, and he became the storyteller. You just think everything is hitting those notes. I mean, it's amazing. It's like they were his. It's just. I mean, he was really here to tell us a story and
Yeah.
to
And
see things in a different way or be open-minded about things and see things differently. But it's so hard again when it's our children. There's something different about being able to do it in society, out in the world, and not being able to control our children. Listen, it's so hard. And addiction and mental health is, it's almost heartbreaking.
absolutely. So again, to your point of, how he was using the energy of his jar so successfully, it's not only that he had these successes, it's that everybody that worked with him had nothing but fondness for him. I saw a little interview of Robin Wright. She was the actress who came on board for the Princess Bride. Brand new, didn't know anything about the craft, and she had nothing but lovely things to say about him. And that I think that really tells you something because they brought this young person on who didn't have any skills, and rather than intimidate her and manipulate her to get what he wanted, his approach is completely different. He was a calming, you know, protective influence that acted as a mentor and taught her. That's what she said, and which created her entire career. Really, it
Okay,
launched her.
look what you just said. I love the brilliance of what you just said. You said he was this gentle, kind, helpful. But you said something really brilliant. You said mentor. And I will say to you, he has a moon in Virgo. He would be a great mentor if he used his skills well. And just that beautiful relationship with that sun and the moon, his soul was a mentor. His soul was a teacher in a way, right? And so, and then, but yet then he shined. He was able to use his words in such a way that held her. That held her. I mean, then you think about Stand By Me, right? He took all those kids, and that was I love. I mean, I haven't seen that in a long time. I should rewatch it. I loved Stand By Me. I think it was one of the best movies. And then those were all young actors who I think I think they're going to be heartbroken because they're going to be heartbroken. I think Hollywood is going to be heartbroken.
I think we all feel like the world is a little bit darker because he think of all the great films we just named in our talk. Not they weren't just films that we like. These were films that we feel are a part of us, that we are so deeply connected to, and we don't get to see any more of them because he's not here anymore.
Yeah.
I think that's why the world feels a little bit darker because of it.
Yeah, it does feel it. I'll stop sharing this chart, but it does feel darker. I mean, that we're not supposed to be fearful. We're supposed to be love, right? And how do you not be fearful when you're watching people's lives change in an instant and their lives will never be this, we have no control. And I just go back to this idea of the nodes where they are, the Pisces and Virgo. And we really all have to kind of surrender and trust and have faith. But it really is hard to trust and have faith when we see it feels and I go back to drugs because, you know, what we would be able to do when we're not on drugs and what we would do when we are on drugs is very different.
Mhm.
And people, there's this, it's like the elephant in the room, but I'm sure he was on drugs. And it opens up a portal to something. There's evil, and I used to not believe in evil. So I think that's what makes me so sad, because I'm not saying that he's evil, this boy. I'm saying to you, something happened along the way that created this reality for him, that he had such anger.
I think it's energy. It's energy.
Yes.
I think this energy took hold of him, and it can happen. It can happen. That's so you have to be aware of it, and this is an example of, wow, reminded again that everybody has energy, and it's their responsibility to use it wisely, use it positively. And we're all at risk of letting that dark energy take advantage of us. It can come in very slowly, it can come in, you know, unconsciously, and it can slowly build. But if you're not focusing on it and dealing with it, and I think this is what happened here, right? You've really got to get in there and put a light on it. Use your mind and your spirit to create the energy that's needed to eliminate it.
Yeah. And I will say we have to, and I don't know, I'm a big advocate for being clean. I think that you'll feel better. I know people think you feel better doing drugs, but I will say to you, you don't feel better doing drugs. Nobody does. Not in the long run, you don't. So in the moment, that quick moment of time when we have these choices, I would just love to see people. Here's my thought. I think sometimes the brightest lights have the darkest darks. And so sometimes the brightest lights are looking for, I'll say, source or God. And how do you find it? It's very hard to find, but it's not really that hard to find. But we think somehow drugs will get us there, and it just doesn't. It doesn't get you there.
It doesn't. That's right.
It's like a lie.
Yeah.
So,
And again, this might have been the case here too, but many people use drugs to self-medicate, right? They're just trying to block and suppress, but it's not looking at the issue and dealing with it.
yeah, and then
It's
nothing changes. Yeah,
right.
we're better off just admitting that I have a problem, or our relationships have problems. But I will say this. I will say to you, I'm so grateful, because we're going to talk about their charts together, but I'm so grateful that we talked about him alone.
Yes.
I'm very proud of him, I will say to you, because we forgot to just say what I would do. And I'll say to you, I don't think, here's the truth. He
Mm-hmm.
did such a beautiful job. If I were him, I think I'm very proud of him for
Mm-hmm.
living the life he did and for being the human he was. And I guess maybe I'll say, noticing where our anger should be placed, maybe, is an interesting thought for him. That was what I'll say, is deal with what makes you angry and face it. That's the only thing I would say, is that we have to face our own anger. So
I
that
I
would be
always say,
interesting to him based on his
yeah,
chart.
if I would say, if I were you, I would say know how much you were loved and admired. But I think he did. I
Yes.
think that he did, and he
I think he
deserved.
do, and I think he appreciated his friendships a lot. And I think people told. My guess is that people felt safe enough to tell him how much they loved him. I hope so, because I think that's our biggest regret when people die before the time,
Mhm.
that that they're loved. Like
Mhm.
did I tell him that I loved him, right? And I bet you people did. Don't you think that? I think people felt safe with him.
Absolutely. Who he was again, he was the guy who seemed like you could just run into him at a coffee shop or anywhere and just talk about the weather. But he was so much more than that. He had that beautiful quality to him.
Yeah. Did you ever see him or meet in person? Like, because you live in California now, because I
Now,
wonder what he seems like a very normal guy.
yes,
He
right.
seems like you. I don't know that just that he didn't that he was friendly and nice, and you could tell him your problems, right?
But very smart, very aware, very active. He wasn't afraid to tell people how he felt, and he was passionate about it.
Yes, yes. It's which is interesting, right? Because that's a very Mars. I keep on thinking of this idea that somehow if something's in a square, is that harder for them to do? But he was so good at taking action. He was so good at creating. He was such a great. He did his chart beautifully, actually. And I wish it didn't have to end in that way. But I guess we all have our. I guess life gives us kind of what we're supposed to have and our experiences we're supposed to have, but it doesn't I'll say seem fair to me. And I don't like that word fair, but it doesn't seem fair to me.
I agree completely, but I'm also thinking about the great job that he did while he was here. He just did a spectacular job. So
Yeah.
much to be admired.
And you know what? His love story with his wife will stay on from Harry Met Sally. And his he will never leave. That's the whole beauty, I think, when you're an artist and you leave your work and it's such good work, it will be good in 50 years
Yes.
from now. His children can
Mhm.
show their children.
Mhm.
And And that's the thing. We could look at life and we could look at somebody from the 5 minutes at the end or something that didn't happen that wasn't beautiful, or we could look at their life as the 78 years that he lived
Mhm.
and see the glory of it and the beauty of it. And it's easy for us to go to the not
Mhm.
so good part of it. But I will say to you, he truly was an artist and he truly was a storyteller and he truly was bigger than life. So it's aren't we lucky that we got to experience his stuff and that
Great
he had
man.
the courage to create?
Mhm. We're all much more fortunate for him being here.
Yeah. Well, I will say, everyone may we choose to I don't know. We choose to learn something from all of this,
Mhm.
and may something good come out of something very bad.
Yes.
And that's what he would want, right? Because he does want to
Yes.
make things better. So I'll say somehow maybe something changes in the world because of this.
Yeah, I'm sure it will.
Yeah. I have to say one last thing because I thought it was so interesting how easy it was for him to tell stories and how when he made the movie about being Charlie about his son, and it was the first time that they could really deal with their relationship was creating this container and a set, and I think he really was able to absorb or feel compassion or have this experience by creating that movie, and how wonderful that he gave that to his son. Whether his son could see that now or not, that was very generous of him and very vulnerable. Talk about being vulnerable and wearing and being so outwardly showing your not being seen as perfect because
Yeah, it's
son
a
was
father's
really hard on
love.
him in the interviews and in the whole movie. I didn't see the movie, but
Yeah,
yeah.
it's a father's love. That's what he was putting it out there.
And I do know this from the work I do that sometimes when we're human We're not always so good at telling people how we feel, but our soul loves our children so much. Whether they're perfect or not perfect, they just want every father, every father in their soul wants the best for their children. They might not show it on the outside and they might not know how to be examples of that, but they do love. And I think when people pass and they leave, I believe that their heart opens radically and want they just want you to know that they love you. And I'm sure even after all of this, that father still loves that son very much.
Mhm.
As crazy as that might sound, but I do believe that.
Mhm. I agree.
So
Okay.
amazing. If we could really forgive, I'll talk about Pisces energy and forgiveness. May he forgive.
Yes. Yes. Well, thank
Thanks
you.
for being here, and
Yeah,
I appreciate you.
I appreciate you too, and I'll see you soon.
I'll see you. We'll talk about it more.